There you go.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Mike. Okay, so welcome to the Budget Education and City Services Committee of CB5. I hope everybody had a really great summer. My name is Renee Kinsella. I am the chair of this committee. Julie Chu is the vice chair. And tonight we have 3 items on the agenda. But before we start, I think we should just go around in person and introduce ourselves here, and then on the computer. So, Mike, if you want to kick us off.
So Mike Kback, Community Board number 5, 2 other committees. I live in New York City and I'm a tour guide in the city.
Thank you.
Kevin Frizz, brand new member to CB5 and obviously to this committee. Happy to be here.
Welcome, welcome.
Seth Borden, also on the SLAP committee. I've been here for about 2 years.
Fabulous, thank you.
Chuck Miller, I live and work in the district.
Thank you.
I'm Mary Brosnahan, secretary, and also on the VEX committee.
Thank you.
Brad Sherburn. I'm also on the Landmarks Committee.
Thank you. As I said, my name is Renee Kinsella. We also have Zona. If you'd like to introduce yourself, she's on the computer. There's Zona.
Hey everyone, Zona Zoo with CB5, also on SLAP.
Go. Tonight, I just want to give you a brief overview of how the committee works. Each presenter has the opportunity to speak to the committee, and after the presentation is concluded, the committee has the opportunity to ask questions. And then after the presentation is concluded, members of the public have the opportunity to ask questions. And then once all the questions have been addressed, the committee goes into what's known as business session. That's where we discuss the issue amongst ourselves and take any action that we determine to take. Just want to stress everyone's view is respected in the committee. I encourage every single member to share their views. We all joined the board to contribute. So I'd love to hear everybody's perspective. CB5, I mean, the VEX committee of CB5 is a little bit different than other committees in that we don't have applications. So our determinations are not as straightforward. We could decide to draft a resolution or a letter to support an issue, or we may decide to seek further information or simply use the presentation to inform our community. When the committee does have an action item, the issue is voted upon all members of the VEX committee. It then goes, if it passes, to the full board, and that vote is the final position of the board, which in this instance will be September 14th. We have one more person join us. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Laura Garcia. I've been here since 2019.
Welcome, welcome, Laura. Okay, so to get right to it, we have 2 people with us this evening. We have District 2 Superintendent Kelly McGuire, who is going to provide us with the details and an update on the District 2 public schools, the enrollment and other issues for the coming school year. Superintendent McGuire, if you'd like to take the floor.
Sure. Thanks so much for having me this evening. Do you want me to go into a report, or do you want me to wait till everybody gets the chance to introduce themselves?
Oh, we have 2 more people. If I could ask you, Tristan, just to introduce yourself, and hi.
Hi, Tristan Haas, Community Board 5.
And Isabel
Marks, also Community Board 5.
Okay. I think that covers everyone. So did I catch everybody? Everybody has been introduced. Fantastic. I think we can go ahead with the report.
Great. Okay, great. Yeah, so thank you so much again for having me this evening. It's always a real pleasure just to reach out specifically and connect with community boards around the district. We have several, and it's also very informative for myself and our district team to be able to hear directly from elected leaders in all different capacities around the district. And so thanks for the moment to speak with you all this evening. So we are coming off of a pretty exciting summer. Today was the first day back, as some of you may know, for all of our teachers. Our assistant principals and principals came back last week. Today was the first day that all teachers and paraprofessionals were really required to be back into the building, as well as school secretaries, school parent coordinators, as you may know, really work in the building all year round and throughout the summer. So today was the first day back, and several members of our district team and I had the opportunity to go out and connect directly with our new school leaders, listen to them speak with their staff. And so we're off to a really exciting start to the year. We finished a strong summer. We had around 2,000 students in our district complete Summer Rising. We kind of have Summer Rising down, we think, in terms of how it is that it's operational in our schools around the district. I think that in the future, we would love to be able to serve even more students in Summer Rising, as well as have a few additional sites here in District 2. But the students and families that had the chance to participate really came back and told us how much they appreciated the opportunity to work in Summer Rising. Our school leaders, assistant principals who really ran the show in our summer school sites around the district. Like I said, really run a very tight operation along with our teachers who are working from 8 a.m. until 12 p.m. providing an academic program, and then our community-based partners who are working after that until about 6 o'clock at night. So Summer Rising continues to be a program that we feel very strongly about in terms of how it is that we're providing the academic program to families, and we would like to see it expand even more if there is opportunity for that in future budgets. We also, outside from Summer Rising, finished the summer providing a lot of different professional development opportunities to our teachers and school leaders. As some of you may know, when David Banks became the Chancellor of New York City, he reallocated and redistributed people who were providing professional learning to teachers primarily, and reassigned them to district teams. And so we have a very strong team of district staff that we're able to put on and share workshops this summer, both in math and in literacy, a little bit of science as well, to hundreds of teachers. We had some very enthusiastic teachers who are participating in the work this past summer. And the summer work around learning, especially in mathematics and literacy, really is a continuation of the work that we did last year and a good kickoff to the start of this coming school year. We also were able to build on some of the enthusiasm that Chancellor Banks really got going across the city with the NYC Reads curriculum. The NYC Reads curriculum is something that we think will have a very strong impact in our schools to help to round out a lot of strong practices that are already in existence in many of our schools, but really will help to bring a approach to literacy that fills in some of the holes that may have been missing in our literacy curriculum in the past. So we were able to explore some of the different curricula that were made as options under NYC Reads. We are not adopting a curriculum in District 2 this coming year, but we are preparing ourselves to adopt a curriculum for the following year. Although we do have a few schools who were very excited about one of the choices that we think is a strong selection, potential selection for District 2. We have not made an official choice in that, and that is the Wit and Wisdom curriculum. We think fits the needs of many students who are here in our district and also builds on some of the strong supports. So while we haven't made any kind of choice yet, we did bring in groups of teachers and school leaders to look at the different curricula. And like I said, some of them are looking at piloting some of the units from different curricula this coming fall. To start the year, not necessarily located in Community Board 5, but across the district, we have 4 new principals who are joining us. I guess middle school students attend middle school across the district and in different neighborhoods. So 4 new principals who are joining us this year for folks who have retired from the district. Jesse Kupferman is taking over for David Getz at Eastside Middle School. Alexis Quirkus is taking over for Terry Ryder, who is a principal of Battery Park City School. Claudia Rivera is the new principal of 75 Morton, and Lindsay Jacobs is a new principal in our pre-K center. We serve close to 3,000 kids across our pre-K centers in different parts of the district. We also have about 6 new assistant principals who are joining us, and we are very thankful to have a meeting at PS 59, which I think is in CB5 last week with all of our principals and assistant principals. It was a great kickoff and a real thanks and shout out both to the leadership at PS 59 as well as the parents who helped to support some goodies for us at the start of the day. So we were very appreciative of that space and that time. Across our schools, we are just about 100% staffed in all of our schools. We had a couple of changes that occurred in staffing in 1 or 2 of our schools, but we feel very, very strongly that those schools are have made contingency plans for these last minute changes that are impacting families. And so we'll be ready to go 100% on Thursday for the first day of school. There's also a couple of other related items that I think are going to really benefit our schools as we are preparing to open up. As many of you know, toward the end of the spring last year, the United Federation of Teachers settled their contract with the city, and that in that new teacher contract, there was a clarification and a solidification of how professional learning time is used across our schools. During the pandemic years, there was a lot of flexibility around how time was used for professional learning and meeting in schools, and that was just fine. It was a support that was needed in the moment, but we are very thankful now that with this new contract, schools are going to have the opportunity to really have a chunk of time dedicated to professional learning in their schools. So that professional learning primarily will take place after school Mondays, Tuesdays, or Wednesdays. But again, that's a chunk of time, which is something that was reallocated for more logistical purposes during those pandemic years. The other thing that I think is really exciting to note as well is that almost all of our schools have hit their enrollment targets, and many of them actually have exceeded the enrollment targets. As you know, schools across our district have enrolled and are supporting new students from families who are seeking asylum. In some instances, these schools that are meeting and exceeding their enrollment targets are due to the enrollment of new students and families who are seeking asylum, and in other cases, not. But we are excited that there's going to be a real connection between how it is that our schools are programmed and financed and the number of students who are in schools. There's always a worry that schools will be funded for an amount of students who don't end up showing up, but that's not something that is going to happen in District 2 this year. So we're very thankful for that. There's a few things that we're working on and continuing to work on. I mentioned students from families seeking asylum. This certainly has been a challenge across the city and certainly across District 2. We're serving and supporting many, many families across our district, both originally when we first began enrolling students, most of those students were concentrated on the far west side, the Hell's Kitchen area, as well as a bit on the east side. We have, as students have gotten older, they are attending all of our middle schools around the district. And also we're working really closely with our enrollment office to make sure that families are aware of the different options that are available, both in District 2 and across Manhattan, to be able to serve students who may not be English proficient. So students are always given the option to enroll in their zone school, but some families may opt to have their children attend a bilingual program, some of which may exist within District 2 and some of which may exist outside of District 2 in District 4, District 1, or District 6, or and other districts in Manhattan. So we're working very closely with the enrollment office. I have read some horror stories about enrollment, especially enrolling students from families seeking asylum in other parts of the city, but I am very thankful for how it is that our Manhattan borough enrollment team has done in being able to effectively serve families. So that coupled with the fact that our schools are in a good place as well. Over the past spring and summer, our school leaders were able to hire many new staff who were bilingual, as well as specialize in serving and supporting students who are learning English. We feel very good about the position in which we are in staffing wise and skill wise with the staff who are in our schools serving students from family seeking asylum, students who might not be English proficient in all different parts of our district this year. So that's a real strength that we feel will support us as we're going on into the year. But certainly the issue of students and families seeking asylum is an ever-changing it's ever-changing here in New York City. We're serving and supporting students who we don't always know that they're coming, but we do feel like we're in a good place to start the year with schools that are well-staffed and teachers who are well-prepared. The other thing that we're working on as well, we met with a subcommittee of our Community Education Council to talk a little bit about reevaluating the middle school admissions policy. As you know, the policy impacting students entering 6th grade this year, that's a policy that did not include options for screened admissions. And that has continued through the cohort of students who are entering middle school this year. Last year, as a part of the middle school admissions process, I did work with our community, our district, our school leaders to add an honors mathematics program, which is serving students who are performing above grade level in our 4 zoned schools, MS 131, 75 Morton, Baruch Middle School, and Wagner Middle School. So we are working with a committee of leaders from our Community Education Council, teachers and school leaders in our schools to reevaluate that policy and determine whether or not we are making changes that would include options for screened admissions for middle school for students who would be entering middle school in the fall 2024. Any change in that process really needs to be completed by October 1st so that families are aware of what the policy is and that they have the opportunity to visit middle schools all over the district so that they know the kind of program that their child may be interested in, get to know the culture of the school a little bit. Our school leaders have committed to opening their doors to all families who may be interested in visiting and seeing the school in action. Again, we're feeling very good about the start of the year, feeling very good about the experience that we've had together. As I mentioned, when Chancellor Banks took over the role of leader of the city school system, he reorganized school districts so that there were teams underneath superintendents who could work to support schools. And we feel like we're in a really good position to be able to do that, to respond to the needs of schools, to listen in to the various comments that are coming from teachers and school leaders and families. So we're headed into a new year that we think is very exciting. And we just feel very solid about the position in which we're in to be able to serve all of our students. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Superintendent. I wonder if we can open it up to questions from the committee. Brad.
Yeah, I want to reiterate, thank you for that presentation. That was very helpful. As you may or may not know, we are currently in the process of putting together our budget for the next fiscal year. And so as part of that process, we've been doing outreach probably to a number of the schools under your umbrella. But I wanted to ask, while we have you here, are there items that the school district is looking for or budgetary requests that the school has already made that we can support as we put together our budgeting priority document for the next coming year? And also, if it's easier, we can do this by email. I just want to offer it now, and maybe we'll follow up as well.
Sure. And I'm happy to follow up via email and continue the conversation as well. if we're talking about stuff, like items to purchase, that is, no, not that necessarily.
Well, it's stuff or it's, so it's either capital or it's, thank you, expense.
Services. Yeah,
Yeah,
you know, one of the things that is always, I think, a top of mind for school leaders, especially in elementary schools, is the resource and support that might go along with after-school programs. So there are, you know, arts grants that are in place that enable a school to be able to hire a community-based arts organization to come in and provide some of their services and supports. As you know, middle school has a after-school funded program through DYCD, but elementary schools don't have that kind of program. And so if a school has enough students who are receiving free or reduced lunch, they might have a they might be able to partner with an organization that is publicly funded that can come in and provide an after-school program for a school. But if a school does not have that many students who are who receive free or reduced lunch, then a lot of those after-school programs are organized and facilitated by the school or by the PTA. I know that many of our PTAs, I've never met a PTA who wasn't generous with a number of students whose families can't necessarily afford the after-school fees that are associated with working in having their child attend an after-school program. So any kind of supplemental support like that is always a real support for schools. Being able to hire a CBO to run an arts program means that maybe the school doesn't necessarily have to fund an arts program out of a PTA budget or a school budget. And so those kinds of supports are always great. And I think that it's always the dream of both elementary school leaders and, you know, myself and many others too, district leaders at the central office too, to be able to provide a free, really robust after school program, you know, K through 8, K through 12. You know, these are the things that we're always striving for. So thanks for asking, and I'll be happy to follow up whenever.
thank you.
Yeah, 2 questions. The first is, the NYC reads curriculums and the Wit and Wisdom reading curriculums that you're talking about, are those both phonetics based?
So all 3 curricula that are that are endorsed by the central office that have been vetted, that are kind of fall under the umbrella of NYC Reads. NYC Reads is certainly one of these new 3 curricula, but it is also a commitment to ensuring that all teachers in elementary school and middle school are strong teachers of literacy. The commitment from both our district and from our central office is to not necessarily adopt the phonics-based program that is directly connected with those 3 curricula that are vetted from the central office, because schools have already adopted a separate phonics-based program to help students in the earliest grades, starting in pre-K. So Wit and Wisdom has a feature that is phonics related called geodes. Geodes are for students who are not necessarily, is a set of books that are not necessarily for students who are the earliest readers, that are just learning their sounds and things like that. But once students have learned their sounds, then they can transition into these geodes books to be able to read stories that have predictive text and enable them to hone their phonics-based skills. We have 2 programs that are already in District 2, and we spent a lot of time over the summer really training hundreds of teachers in a program called Foundations and Really Great Reading. These are exclusively phonics-based programs, vocabulary building programs that couple nicely with both the 3 core curricula, but especially with Wit and Wisdom, because it is a natural fit with this geodes, with these geodes resources that many of our schools are already using.
Great, thanks so much.
Did you have a follow-up?
I didn't have a follow-up question. I just have one more question about, you mentioned being 100% staffed. Did you adjust your staff? Were you able to adjust your staffing targets for the schools that are over enrolled? Or do you feel like there's a need to do that?
Yeah. So that's a great question. So we were able to, thankfully, we had many students who are enrolling in the school early on. So over the summer, our principals were meeting with our district budget directors and budget directors at the borough office in Manhattan. Many of our schools were able to get additional funds that were into their budgets, and so they were able to do that hiring. Yeah.
That's great to hear. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Thank you. Zona, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, thanks so much for the presentation. This kind of on a similar vein. I'm really curious to hear if you have any updates just on general like satisfaction and turnover levels of teachers and educators, and maybe how that's trending relative to during COVID times and normal times before that.
Yeah, thanks so much for that. I mean, I'm a little cautious to say because I don't have specific data that are in front of me in regard to this. Just a lot of different anecdotal stories that I can share. I will say that the mood and the vibe in District 2 and in District 2 schools is very positive. Our principals that have needed to hire new teachers have not had any trouble hiring new teachers in most areas. Special education continues to be an area in which both our district, the city, and across the country really needs more special education teachers. And as you know, we are very fortunate in our district when we have a vacancy arise. People want to work in District 2. And so we often have many people applying, but our principals do have high expectations for the educators that are in their buildings. We generally have not this past year hired very many first-year teachers. I met with all of our new teachers last week, and it was about 115 of them across the district. About half of them reported to me directly that they were first-year teachers coming in. Anecdotally, many of our principals have been excited to share that they have been hiring teachers from charter schools who have had a few years of teaching under their belt, learned classroom management, and now they're really ready to join in on the district and really engage in this professional learning community that District 2 is incredibly well known for, and something that we're continuing to nurture as I am superintendent. So.
That's super helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. And if I can come across more data on teachers, I'd be happy to share that. It's something that I'm really, really interested in. I guess like anecdotally, we don't, the din of teachers leaving in droves is not something that we are coming across this year.
Thank you.
Sure.
Charles, your hand is raised.
Hi, Superintendent Charles Nye here. So my question is, if a migrant has a degree in teaching and education from their country and they want to work, and obviously they get background checked in America, how do you background check them in their home country?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I can't claim to know all the ins and outs of that, to be honest with you. I do know that there is a special visa that does need to be obtained in order for teachers to be able to work in the city and work in this capacity. There's a reciprocity that needs, or if there is reciprocity with applying teachers home state or home country, then that is something that is worked out at the state level with state level policy. I do know that there are some opportunities for folks who are new to the city working that would enable them to first become substitute teachers, but even substitute teachers also have to participate in background checks. So my assumption is that the process is both lengthy and also somewhat laborious for the applicant. But there is certainly a process and a way for credentials to be checked. There's a whole entire unit that exists within the New York City Department of Education that reviews an applicant's credentials, ensures that the proper coursework and experience has been completed by the applicant. But I think that, you know, knowing that people who are coming to our city, people who might speak a language other than English, that we certainly value them and want to be able to provide employment as well as benefit from their joining our community, so long as the proper channels and background checks have been completed.
Yes, because I'm concerned, because I just want to say personally, I have a home health aide, and I discovered that he was background checked in America, but not in his home country of Venezuela. And it does concern me when migrants are working with vulnerable populations. And as you can imagine, there's all different roles in a school, from janitor to teacher to, assistant teacher, et cetera. I think it's, really important to try to make sure there's a way to also background check someone in their home country and speedily too, before they get their position, surely, than just relying on an American background check.
Yes, I totally agree. And there are both city level reviews that need to occur, as well as state level reviews that need to occur. But this is something that if you wanted to reach out to me individually, I would be happy to research this and see what I can come up with to determine what the actual channels are and checks are that need to take place in order for someone to be employed as an educator or in a school in general.
Thank you. Tristan.
Great. Thanks again for coming in and presenting to us today. So as you know, there's like a lot of focus on the learning loss that occurred in schools during COVID and the period since. Do you have any data or insights that you could share regarding how student reading and math performance in District 2 was impacted during the COVID period, and how that compared to other districts in the city and to nationwide trends? And to the extent that there was regression, are you continuing to see like backsliding in last year, or are there new initiatives that you guys have implemented to come back from that, achieving progress?
Thanks. It's a really great question, and there are many things that can be learned in school, but certainly we want students to learn the skills that they need in mathematics, reading, literacy, science, those in order to move on and be successful both in and out of school. So to answer your question specifically, in regard to data that are normed in the way that I think that you're looking for, is that we haven't yet received state exam data from New York in regard to students' test scores students' exams that were completed last spring. So we are eagerly awaiting that. There are a few things that are holding up the release of those exam scores that would really enable us to get a new picture of how our students were doing at the end of the year last year. There is a change in standards. There are several different factors that have gone into place that might impact those outcomes and that need to be worked out across the state. I can say that for the year prior, that District 2 was different in comparison to other districts across the city, and when compared to national trends, in that on average, our students the proficiency level of our students in reading and literacy did not change. It was generally flat across the district. There wasn't a change from pre-pandemic to post-pandemic. And so those literacy scores changed. What did change were our mathematics scores. And we dropped from about 76% of our students being proficient in mathematics to 71% of our students being proficient in mathematics. That change, we hope, is stabilized and that we will find ourselves on the positive end of the rebound, although we have been cautioned that comparing scores that were obtained under the Common Core standards, exams that were aligned with the Common Core standards, it's going to be very difficult to compare those scores to exams that were aligned with the next generation learning standards. That's the next generation of learning standards that our students were learning in this past year, and that were and the exams that they took last year were aligned to those standards. So there is a bit of a that will be a little bit complicated. We did administer to all of our students a series of assessments. You may, if you're following education policy in the city, you may have heard of them as academic screeners. Academic screeners are, there are a few of them that are used commonly across our district. The Acadience reading screener, the iReady screener, MAP growth is another screener that's commonly used across our district. Those tests, those assessments, those screener assessments, they're very, very short. They do give us good information about how a student is progressing through the set of skills that are allocated to their grade level, or that are skills that are assigned to their grade level. But they don't really allow us to compare students from one school to another, or districts from one district to another. These are really very short assessments that allow us to see, compare a student to his or herself. And obviously, we're always seeking for students to grow from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. Growth is really what it is that we are monitoring through those screener assessments. And there are different rates of growth that are important to us as well. A student who is working below grade level, we want them to make up more than just 1 year in a year's time. We want them to eventually catch up to students who are performing at grade level. So the intention is the goal is for them to learn at a rate that is faster than that of 1 year's growth. So we have those assessments, which have been very useful to us, but really only in looking at students as individuals in comparison to themselves. But we hope to get information from the state soon. That even if they are different exams, I think that, or different sets of standards, I think they will be helpful to us in our planning.
Very helpful. Thank you. And could you maybe talk about, the phenomenon of like missing students that have dropped out of the system and didn't resume education since COVID, whether that's like an issue in your district, and what specific initiatives like you have implemented to kind of bring those students back into the system?
Yeah, thanks. So one thing that our district is unique in that in every district there is a different set of students who are enrolled there. One thing that is specific to our students is that we really only work with students who are entering 3K, so 3 years old, through 8th grade. We just have one school that in the superintendency that I supervise that serve students in high school. So we generally have not had the issue of missing students in these early grades. That hasn't been, it wasn't a problem when I was a principal in the district, and it historically just hasn't been an issue in the time since I've been superintendent. What I can say is that the work that we have been doing with students and families who are seeking asylum has really put a strain and a challenge on that. We know that families are coming to New York, but they're not necessarily staying in New York. Maybe they stay in New York State. Maybe they go and stay with family that are in other parts of the country. And so at times that has been challenging, where a student does not show up for school, and we have to make sure to track them down before the child is unenrolled from our schools. That's a mandate and a law. We can't just unenroll students from the school. We have to know where it is that they are going, where it is that they have landed. And sometimes that's because the family tells us where they're going and we're able to make contact with the new school in the new city or state. Sometimes we don't hear about that, but we get confirmation from a family member who is, or a friend who's still in the city. And then we're able to make contact with the family or contact with the new school and confirm that the child is enrolled there. So it has been a bit of a challenge. We have hired additional attendance staff. We have trained our additional attendance staff, as well as our school leaders, our secretaries, our parent coordinators. They're going about the process of enrolling students from families seeking asylum a little bit differently. They're collecting a lot more information about those students, not just where they're staying in New York City, but sometimes we're collecting information from the students and families with and obtaining contact information back in their home country. I've heard more than one story about a secretary contacting a family in Ecuador to find out where a child had moved in different parts of the country. So, but we are getting much better at that. And so what was a real challenge for our schools has become a little bit less so because we're looking at this, taking that opportunity when a child first comes into the school to really gather information and get to know the family.
If I could just ask a question, I think the CEC wanted a questionnaire about exiting families. Is that something that's going to be implemented, or is that something you're thinking about?
Yeah, the Community Education Council, during our August meeting, they put forth a resolution requesting that we survey and interview families who have left New York City, not families of one particular group. Not that resolution didn't necessarily pertain to students from families seeking asylum. I don't think that it excluded it necessarily, but that language wasn't used in the resolution. I have been reaching out to our enrollment office. They are seeking to do a more robust interview and survey process. This is the survey that I think that is being sought through the CEC resolution is a really great survey. It is just something that really should be taken on by the professionals in our city to make sure that the survey is properly developed and administered. So that is a conversation that I'm currently having with our enrollment office. I will say that as a part of any child's discharge from New York City schools, we conduct a short interview that is recorded in our data systems. That short interview obviously collects some very basic information about where the child is going, but we do also ask to what type of school might a child be enrolling. Are they enrolling in a charter school or a private school or out of state? So we ask a few questions that we collect data on. Those questions and the summary of those questions are included on an annual report that the district planning office presents to the Community Education Council. And they're going to be doing that actually either in the month of October or November.
Thank you. Mary, I think you had a question.
Yeah, thank you so much for your presentation. Do you have a moment just to give us a quick update on Gifted and Talented program? I hope it continues to expand, but I understand you have so many other demands right now.
So elementary school gifted and talented programs have expanded by one class in our expansion site, which was PS 126. PS 126 was the school that we selected, or that that I selected in partnership with the principal to expand offerings of gifted and talented programs in our district. PS 126, as some of you may know, is a school that is actually a kindergarten through 8th grade school. We thought it was a good option because it would enable the school to be able to serve students through 8th grade and not just through 5th grade, in which gifted and talented programs in elementary schools generally stop. So PS 126 has started a little bit slow with the enrollment, but that grew throughout the year last year. And as we're entering the 23-24 school year, we have really a robust set of students who are going to be in 3rd grade at PS 126, and now that program has expanded to 4th grade at PS 126. As I mentioned, just in regard to our middle school admissions plan, while middle schools in our district are not gifted and talented, we are looking at creating some programs for honors level or accelerated students, options that may exist on the application for students who are entering 6th grade next year. So it's middle school technically does not have gifted and talented, but we do have an option for being able to include accelerated screened programs on the application to which families can apply, and those students who meet the academic criteria could be accepted.
Thank you. Any follow-ups or additional? I wonder if you could just, I don't know if this is within your wheelhouse, but potential bus strike. Are there plans for students should a bus strike occur? I don't know if you can speak to that.
Yeah, no, thanks. It's in my wheelhouse in that I know what you all know who have been, I'm sure, keeping your ear close to this, that we're looking okay for the first couple of days of school this week. We know that the union representing bus drivers that is continuing to negotiate, not all bus drivers, but a very large number of them who are serving our students who take the bus to school. They're continuing to negotiate at every moment to avert a strike. I will say that our schools have received bricks of contingency Metro cards that they are to open in case of emergency. Those Metro cards are not the Metro cards that are given out to all students, but these are additional Metro cards that are for students who take the bus as well as their family member. And the Metro card would enable students to obviously take public transportation to and from, but also allow a family member to be able to escort a student to and from school or to the next destination using that city issued Metro card. There are also in some places, for some students, we are expanding options for students to be able to take lift share ride assistance so that students who might not have students and families who might not be able to take city transportation will be able to use those vouchers to take a car to and from school or to school and enable the parent to move on to their next destination, whether that be work or home. But we're crossing our fingers that this all works out.
Thank you. Any other questions from the committee? Tristan?
Yeah, one more question, going back to the proficiency exams. So I know 2 years ago, there was like a massive drop in the rate that students took the test because I think largely driven by, COVID and precautions, remote learning. Did you see an increase in the rates of taking the test last year? And was it similar to the rates of the test taking pre-COVID?
I will say that across our district, students take the test. We are not a district in which there is a large number of opt-outs. We have one or two school communities that have higher rates than the district average. But for the most part, students in our district do take the exam. We did see rates of participation return to the rates that were of test taking that were on record prior to the pandemic.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Any additional questions from the committee? Seeing none, I'm going to turn it to our attendees to see if our attendees have any questions that they would like answered. Craig Slutskin, you're permitted to talk.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Craig Slutskin. I am not on the committee, but I am the second vice chair of CB5. I'm also the PTA president over at PS 340, which is the only District 2 elementary school in CB5. And I'm also one of the elected members of the Community Education Council that the superintendent was referring to earlier. I'm not going to ask the superintendent any questions. I speak to him enough, so I don't need to have my questions answered. I just wanted to make a couple of comments based upon my own experience. First, on the New York City Reads, I do want to commend the superintendent because it's true. He actually is reaching out to his community, his teachers, his principal. The principal at my school sits on a committee which is helping him evaluate the various programs, the various literacy programs. So he is absolutely doing that, and it's to be commended. He's not just making the decision on his own. On the asylum seeker students, PS 340 did actually have for a school its size, it had a sizable amount of asylum seeker students. It's not a big school. And the superintendent is optimistic. I'm cautiously optimistic, I would just say. It's a very big challenge for the teachers, and they're doing most of the teachers are doing a really good job. They did a really good job last year, but it is a challenge, as you can imagine. So when the superintendent talks about not many new teachers, my son's teacher last year was a first-year teacher. So she was a first-year teacher, not speaking the language, not speaking a word of Spanish. You can imagine it was very challenging for her. She did a good job, and the schools are getting some support, but more support, more translators, I think would be helpful. And it's not necessarily at the district level. It's more in the DOE level that we need to push for that. But as I said, the teachers and the administration are doing the very best they can. The parent associations are also trying to help where they can. It's just I don't want to underemphasize the challenge for the staff that it really is, because it is a lot of work to do. Again, everybody's handling it and welcoming the challenge, but it is a big challenge. And on his comment on the new teachers, yes, I can tell you at my school there were 5 new teachers this year. 3 of them I think were from Success or from other charter schools. So we are getting a bunch of new teachers, but they are more experienced this year. So I think that's good. I think that we will be looking at how admissions are done for middle school. The superintendent is reaching out to various parties. It was a big concern for many parents in the district. Many parents left. At Lower Lab, which is not in our district, it's on the Upper East Side. That's a G&T school on the Upper East Side. I think half of and the superintendent might remember the number, but half or maybe 60% of the 5th graders did not stay in the system for middle school. So that's a challenge, and so we're going to be working with the superintendent on admissions to make sure it's something that is meaningful to all parties, because some people don't like screened admissions, and that's perfectly okay also. So we want to make sure, as does the superintendent, that there's something for everybody and something that meets everybody's needs. So looking forward to continuing working with the superintendent and with Renee, of course, as well. And good to see everybody on the screen.
Thank you so much, Craig. Additional questions from panelists and attendees? Seeing none, I just want to thank you, Superintendent, for being here this evening. Really appreciate your presentation and answering our questions. I hope we can keep communications open as the school year goes forward. And we can keep in touch.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm happy to come back anytime.
Thank you so very much. Thank
Thanks.
you.
Have a good night, everybody.
You too. Thank you. Next up, we have Laura Atlas. And Laura, thank you for being so patient with us. She is from Health and Hospitals. And she's going to give us an update on some of the asylum seekers and the migrants in our district. And I'll let you take it away, Laura.
Thank you. I'm going to be really quick because I want to get to questions. And I didn't realize we weren't presenting together. So I'm sorry for misunderstanding that. But yeah, so I do want to just go quickly and then get to questions as quickly as possible. So New York City Health and Hospitals now plays a pretty robust role in the response. We run what are called HERCs, which is a Humanitarian Emergency Relief and Response Center. Primarily, they serve families with children, although we have a few sites such as Randall's Island and Creedmoor and the Candler that serve single adults or adult families. Any site based in a hotel or dorm that is currently serving adults and adult families is actually in the process of transitioning to serving families with children because we need as much space as we can for our families with kids, and we need appropriate space. We can't reasonably place them in these outdoor kind of tent-like congregate settings. So very important that they are in structured spaces. We've been doing a lot of work with our friends at Department of Education. I know the superintendent specifically talked about the enrollment office, and I'd like to give them some props too. They have been incredible. As soon as we tell them a site is coming, they set up shop. We have learned a tremendous amount since we started with the Row Hotel roughly a year ago. We've learned how important it is to enroll people very quickly in school. We've learned how important it is to offer vaccines from the minute they come into the intake center so that they can begin the process of being ready to go to school. At the Roosevelt Hotel specifically, which is in CB5, it is sort of a twofold system. There is an intake center, which is at this point where everybody is directed, who's a newly arrived asylum seeker in New York City. And then there's also a HERC in the Roosevelt. The HERC has about 3,100 people in it. They are all families with children. So, there's about 900 or so households in that 3,100. And so you have to imagine there's about at least 900 children there. For those who are school aged, we've been doing enrollment drives to make sure that folks are able to be placed in school before school goes back. We are extremely excited for back to school. The incredible difference it makes to have the children enrolled and going to school is, sort of like nothing else that we see. It really is the difference between sort of beginning to become comfortable in the city, regain a connection to a community, and be immediately plugged in to all of those amazing resources. And it makes a big difference for the family too. It provides structure for the entire household. So very excited about all of this. We also work hand in hand with our students in temporary housing colleagues. They are there to coordinate things like busing, Metro cards, any inter-school issues. If someone's been bullied or seems to be struggling, they can bring it to our social workers in the sites. The sites all have caseworkers, social workers, clinical setups for kind of urgent care, any immediate concerns, vaccinations. We try to work with folks who have children who are not school aged yet to be able to enroll in things like Head Start. That is a particular challenge though, kids who are not yet able to go to regular elementary school and above. And so we continue to try to work through planning for all of that. We also see newborns. We have about 20 newborns in the HERC system every single month. And so we also work with families in terms of sort of prenatal care, postnatal care, planning. Oftentimes we'll see somebody have a baby who already has at least one child. And so working out contingencies for how to create supervision. That's a very important part of what we're doing. And then just general kind of activity enrollment. We did a big push with our partners at DOE for Summer Rising enrollment. Unfortunately, Roosevelt opened after the Summer Rising program had already closed enrollment. So a lot of the work that the caseworkers spent the summer doing was trying to connect kids to local activities. And again, one of the great things about school is it's very reliable. We know when it's going to open. We know that the kids are going to be able to start tomorrow, and their lives are going to be changed for it. So a very exciting day for us. Those are my top line items. Again, I want to open it up to everybody so we can keep things moving forward.
Thank you so much, Laura. I'm going to turn it over to the committee. Questions from the committee? Charles.
Hi, Miss Atlas, it's Charles Nye here. So I'm wondering if your department can do anything to help the Black Latinx Asian collaborative, which I read about in an article just yesterday, who are 22 charter schools, a group of 22 charter schools, which are located very close to emergency shelters, who are wanting to take in, students that, migrant students. And they, they wrote a letter as recently as August 31st to the outreach commissioner of the Immigrant Affairs, office here in the city, and they got no response. And here is a collaboration of 22 schools who have the support. They have Spanish teachers, they have everything to help the transition, but the city isn't giving them any, response at all. So I don't know if that's something you guys could, bring to the attention to the city, or something, you can investigate or work with that collaborative. And also, I was wondering, I found out that migrants can apply for Access-a-Ride, and I was just wondering if they don't have the funds to pay for Access-a-Ride fares, and also on the eHealth on demand fare, does your department pay for their Access-a-Ride and eHealth on demand trips, or do you know if MTA gives them free trips once they qualify for paratransit? Thank you.
Yeah, so two very good questions. So in terms of charter schools, we've heard anecdotally that there are folks who are enrolling in charter schools. We work very closely with DOE Enrollment. They are able to scale, they're able to bring folks on site to do the enrollment as soon as the site opens, which is an incredibly important feature for us. We need sort of a partner that's consistent and that we can count on to come into a site. No family is required to enroll in New York City public schools, although again, they are the ones who are there, who come with the resources, who are able to provide that level of support, not just during enrollment, but post-enrollment also, because they have the Students in Temporary Housing office. And so that's an extremely helpful tool. We'd never, people are not prohibited from enrolling in any school that they want. Certainly we've heard that people are. But structurally, again, it's very important for us to be able to know that the day the families arrive, DOE Enrollment will be there and ready to start working with families in terms of placing children. And that's really what we're looking for, is the immediate access into schools. Again, when we started this, we didn't really know how long families were going to stay in the system. We didn't know sort of how many families we'd have. We didn't know what the ages of the children in the families would be. And with DOE, we developed a pretty comprehensive program for making sure that as soon as the family has completed intake and goes into the HERC system, they're enrolled in school very quickly. And so I wouldn't want to sort of remove the speed of that process. But again, I mean, if people choose to go to another school, or, I've heard that there are charter schools that are doing outreach events specifically focused on asylum seekers, we don't make a recommendation. In terms of the question about transit, so we can provide Metro cards to people if they have an appointment. So they just have to show us proof of some appointment, and we'll provide a Metro card or a fare. On Access-a-Ride specifically, I don't know that I've heard of specific scenarios where it comes up, but we have caseworkers and we have social workers who are on site to really try to work through any challenges that can happen. We also, again, have clinical care at our sites. So we are able to also work with, ambulances. Like we have usually an ambulance associated with the site or nearby that can transport people, for instance, if they need more complicated medical care, which often they do. So we try to think about that kind of network of support for transportation.
Yes, and just one quick follow-up. I do apologize. I forgot to mention in the same publication yesterday that I came across. Apparently, there's been 41 criminal offences at the Roosevelt Hotel, and the majority of them have been domestic violence. How can we try to keep especially women and children safe from that specific crime, because domestic violence is a very serious offense, and people are trying to come here for a better life, and I think it's important that there must be some sort of vetting or some way of supporting those who are victims of domestic violence to make sure the abuse doesn't continue, or try to prevent it from happening in the first place in the shelters.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are certainly on board with that mission. What I would say is I don't have that number in front of me. I don't know that's that number. I don't know where that number is coming from. But what I can say is that when people go through intake, so everybody who's in the HERC system has gone through intake at the Roosevelt at this point. They are provided a number of screenings. Some are about what services they may need, where they are in their asylum process, how they got to New York City, and kind of their path here. But also we do screenings for depression. We do screenings for kind of any kind of inner household dynamics that we should be aware of, so that from day one, when somebody walks in, we are able to identify if there are any issues. Additionally, every floor of our HERCs has security staff on it. So if they hear anything, if they start to see anything that concerns them, they can reach out to a caseworker. And the caseworkers will typically assign themselves by floors. So they'll say, okay, I'm floors 1 through 4, I'm 5 through 7, and they'll get to know each family. And they'll work with the families if there are specific issues being identified. I would say that incidents that are being reported are not being reported because we didn't know about them. They're being reported because we want to make sure that people have the support that they need, whatever that may be. We also know people have been through extremely traumatic circumstances to get here, through their journey, through whatever it is that they're fleeing. And oftentimes when they have a little bit of stability, they haven't had time to process yet what has happened. And so we want to get them help also. And so we work extremely closely with our partners in the Gotham Health System on mental health first aid. If somebody scores at a certain level on the depression screener, we refer them right into the social worker. We can refer them into our clinics for counseling. We want to make sure that those resources are offered upfront, understanding that this is a particularly vulnerable population.
Yes, and one final question. I do apologize. I promise it's the final one. Are there any security cameras in the hallways, where public spaces of the shelter? Just having interest in the emergency shelters.
I don't know. Every site, we are at the behest of sort of what the site was before we were there. So if there were security cameras there before we got there, then they would still be there. Because the Roosevelt was closed for 3 years, I would be surprised if there were security cameras in every single hallway. I will say, we typically will have security cameras in like immediately outside of a space, just because that's typically where a hotel would install them. And so that's, or if there's like a garage, typically there are cameras there as well. But again, we have security who are on site 24/7. We have case managers and social workers who are also there to intervene if anything, if they are needed. And we have H&H staff on site 24/7 as well. So you have multiple layers of kind of oversight and help available.
Thank you. Additional questions from the committee? Laura.
Thank you, Renee. Hi, Laura. I'm Laura. I have a question regarding, you had mentioned about you have newborns delivered, 20 newborns delivered every month, and you offer prenatal and postnatal care. Are all these child rearing and childbearing women taken care of in the health and hospitals, or are they where do they go to? The reason I ask,
yeah. Oh, go ahead, please.
reason I asked is because I'm also an educator, and then we go to hospitals where sometimes our students don't get to see a delivery. So I was wondering if the institutions where they, these women deliver, be a good partner for.
Yeah, it's definitely regional, I'd say, right? So the Roosevelt is close enough to Bellevue that we certainly refer a lot of folks to Bellevue. We also have Metro Health Plus on site at our locations doing enrollment in healthcare. So one of the things we want to make sure is that while we can provide kind of urgent care on site, that's not a good makeup for preventative care via primary care. So Metro Health Plus is really our entry into primary care. And so we've enrolled tens of thousands of people at this point in Metro Health Plus, which has allowed them to see primary care doctors. Again, they can be in the H&H system. They may be in other systems as well. We also have a sprawling Gotham clinical system. So, we encourage people to pursue primary care. Most people are not reluctant to. They have been without connection to care for a while. And, this is an exciting thing that they can participate in. But so Bellevue certainly has been an amazing partner, and we certainly rely on them for many things. But we've also referred people to Mount Sinai or to NYU, again, sort of based on where a person is located. In terms of the care being offered on site, we do a number of things. So when somebody arrives and they're with child, obviously they're identified. We work with them to make sure that they have that care that they need in their pregnancy. And we also work with them on things like, for instance, people don't necessarily know that you need a car seat in order to leave the hospital. And so we put together an entire sort of supply package that they're going to need just to sort of begin the process of bringing their baby home. And so that is also built into the care that we're delivering. It's not sort of specific to just healthcare.
Thank you. Additional questions, Brad, did I see your hand?
Yeah, kind of a same question that I asked the superintendent in our last one, is that we are working on our annual budget. So are there any line items, capital or expense, that you'd like to see included within our district needs statement?
I think the superintendent's point about after school is very well taken. I will add a little bit more to that, which is that there is not typically busing available for after school. And a lot of students are going out of district at this point because District 2, and they've done an amazing job accommodating all of the new folks coming in, but we're at the point where most of the bilingual availability is going to be farther north at this point. So if folks, let's say somebody's going up to East Harlem for school, and they would like to participate in an after school program, but they need to be bused back, unfortunately, we don't have a good solution for that at this point. We can provide a Metro card, but we're talking about children at this point. So I think, I would add that into any kind of request related to after school programming. I would also say, and it's not necessarily child specific, but we hear all the time about the need for English as second language. There are some sites we have where we've partnered with DYCD to bring in their contracted providers to provide English language courses. They're extremely popular. And, I think that in the families with children households, there's an advantage, which is that the parents can kind of learn along with the kids, harder in the single adult and adult family populations. But again, I think any kind of support for the parents in terms of learning the language is extremely helpful. We constantly hear requests for OSHA classes. We have a few places that we refer people where they can begin to get OSHA certified. One of the challenges that we face is that most folks are going to have to wait a minimum of 150 or so days to get temporary work authorization. They will work anyway. There's not much we can do to sort of limit that. And it's honestly the reason people have come is because they want to work. We hear often, I came up here first, I'm in 3 weeks, the rest of my family is coming, I need to make money before that. So OSHA is helpful because then at least when your authorization comes through, you're already certified. And you sort of have a sense of what your rights are, especially if you're doing, work that can be very dangerous. So that's important for folks in our system. And anything new as it relates to kids is always helpful, right? Like somebody gave us a big donation of new books. Those are extremely popular. Kids don't have a lot of new things. We can provide, food and clothing and sort of basic necessities, but anything beyond that, which, it sounds kind of trivial, but like it is something that really brings people lots of joy and, has proven to be like an extremely helpful thing to have on site. Although it's minor compared, I'd say, to the other things we talked about.
Great, thank you very much.
Additional questions from the committee? I just have a question, and I know it's a moving target at this stage. I know that we had a census, but now at this stage, how many HERC sites in our district? How many families versus single? For CB5?
Yeah, so most, like any system that's sheltering folks is going to be driven by families with children, right? That's going to be where you see the most people, just because when a household comes in, it's not 1 or 2 people, it's 3 to 5 people. So that's going to be true across all of our sites, except for Respite, which only serves single adults or adult families. So in CB5, you have Roosevelt. I think Walcott is also in CB5, although it may be on the border. So Walcott is a smaller site, previously or currently serving single adult women and adult families and being transitioned to families with children. Because again, the crunch for space for families with children has become such that we need to start moving everyone out of the sites that we're able to have adults that are non-congregate. So those 2. I don't believe there's another one that's actually in CB5. There are a few near CB5. So like the Watson, which is technically CB4, is very close, I believe, because it's over by Lincoln Center. But those are your 2.
Is the Redberry yours or
No.
no? Okay. And what happens to the single women and the single families?
We're going to go to Randall's Island. So Randall's Island and Creedmoor, which are 2 large outdoor congregate sites, they're going to take on the capacity for the single adults, which, I mean, that was a struggle in and of itself. I'm sure everybody remembers the line that was outside of Roosevelt. The reason there was a line outside of Roosevelt was not because there was no room in Roosevelt itself. It's because people who needed placements in the single adult population did not have a bed. We didn't have a bed for them across any system in the city. So people were being told, if you can be reticketed, if you can be reconnected to family, we'll do that for you now. You can go through intake. But if you need a bed, if you need a placement, going through intake isn't going to accomplish that. It's just going to mean you went through intake. And then what will happen is that the arrival center will be completely congested, which has happened before. And when families come in, we won't be able to work with them. So really the priority is always making sure that families have placements. We have fortunately never had to turn a family away at this point, but there have been some dicey moments. One of the things that Randall's and Creedmoor really help us with is not just eliminating any kind of waiting period for single adults, but also creating that new capacity for families with children.
What happens in Randall's when winter comes?
I mean, the tents can be winterized. It's I've spent a lot of time out there the other week. They're not really tents. They are, I would say, like soft structures. They have HVAC systems. They're extremely cold right now because it's hot out. They will be extremely warm when it's winter. It's actually built on a part of the island. When we did the first version of Randall's, we were not in the same area. We are now in an area that's under asphalt. And one of the interesting things about this area that's a big benefit actually is that there's a whole drainage system under the asphalt so that rain and snow are not sort of as precarious as they honestly would have been at the other site. So we're excited about that. I mean, honestly, as emergency management will tell you, New York City is a coastal city. Like most areas of New York City have kind of flooding and winter concerns, but because of where this is specifically located, we feel pretty confident about its ability to be able to perform fine in the winter.
Thank you. Charles, I see your hand. You have a question?
Yeah, just a quick one. Would 18 years old be the cutoff for what would qualify as a child, or is it over that, or maybe you can let me know. under 18. So an 18-year-old wouldn't, right?
Well, but it's complicated, right? Because if I have two kids and let's say one's 18 and one's 15, I can go to the site for families with children because I have one child who's under 18 and we're together as a household. In the same way that I can go, if I have a child with somebody and we're both over 18 and the child's 5, we can all go to the site together.
Understood.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Sure, Mary.
Yeah, quick follow-up to that. Are there no new youth shelter placements for the 18 to 25-year-olds?
So
Or are they just being thrown into the congregate facilities?
yeah, so they would go if they are coming to Roosevelt and they don't have a family that they're linked to, or they're in an adult family without any children, then they would go to a congregate site. Thrown is not the word I would use. I would say placed.
I would. That's why we have the youth facilities, because they're preyed upon. In the
Yeah,
large
I mean,
facilities.
but the youth facilities in and of themselves, I think, are already have capacity.
Oh, no doubt. That's why we need to increase the capacity.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're hearing across the board, and it's not just specific to folks who are sheltering people, is that there is already a lot of capacity strain anyway, and now we're adding, tens of thousands of people.
Kevin.
Hi, Laura. My name is Kevin Frizz. I'm a new board member to CB5, but I'm also a board member for the food bank for New York City. And so from that point of view, I'm just curious, how are all these people being fed? What is the
Great
source?
question. We're very proud of our food program. We have 2 vendors that we primarily work with. One is called LIC Commissary, based in Queens. The other one is called Rethink. So Rethink is at Roosevelt, and they have a really cool model where they work with local restaurants to source meals from them that are kind of like overstock meals. So everything is prepared fresh, but they'll, reach out to the local restaurants and say, hey, what did you guys buy too much of, And so we've been able to make a really creative kind of menu. We've also worked really hard on the menu in the beginning. When we were serving folks primarily from Venezuela, we, said, okay, we're going to put together a menu that looks like Venezuela. And then we started to get people from West Africa. We started to get people from Russia and the Ukraine. We started to get people from, basically it's a global population at this point. So we had to push ourselves more to say, what can everybody agree on? So we did that via surveys. We knocked on doors. We asked people to rate meals. We discovered some very interesting things. Nobody likes roast beef. Everybody likes Italian food. So there's a lot of Italian food. There's a lot of staples like rice is typically featured. The other day we were at a site in out by JFK in a hotel, and they were making a chicken Caesar salad, and we watched them sort of prepare the whole thing. And so we do try really hard on the food front to be responsive to the things that we're hearing. But yeah, typically we don't see food insecurity. I think something that is a little bit misunderstood about this population is that folks are not necessarily in our system because they don't have access to money or resources. What they don't have is like a permanent status. So the structural barriers for moving out are the thing that is keeping them in our care, as opposed to, just not having enough money to move. So things like we hear from people all the time, like, I would move out if only I had this kind of identification, if only I had a landlord reference, things that we don't really think about that are just a part of sort of living in New York City are very challenging in this population. Or like if I had a bank account, right? People are working, they're getting paid in cash. They don't have the ability to bank here because they don't have a social security number. So those are the challenges that we look at.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? Any questions from any attendees? I'm seeing none. So Laura, I just want to thank you for coming back to the committee and keeping us updated. We really appreciate it, and we'd love to keep the conversation going as things change and progress. Thank you so
happy
much.
back to school, everyone.
Thank you. You too. Thank you so much, Laura.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, everyone, that was very informative. They were not action items because they were educational items, but now we're going to move to the budget. I know that everybody has their assignments, but what I wanted to do is sort of, I know we have new people. So I wanted to sort of go through what the budget process is, but it's sort of mystifying people. The city charter requires that community boards submit these budget requests every fall, usually around October 31st. And it used to be that there were capped, we had 40 capital, 25 expense. Those sort of numbers are not hard anymore, so we can, you know, as many expenses and as many capital as we actually have. And basically what it is we're making just a list of things that people in our community require, just exactly as Brad asked the presenters tonight. And then within those requests, we're putting them into different categories. So for instance, health and human services and education, and then we're going to rank them. And we're sort of going to horse trade, like I've heard from X, Y, and Z that this is the most pressing item, you know, and somebody else might have a different view. And we eventually agree on those priorities. And it's basically, we submit that list to the city. We are an advisory board, which means that some of our requests are not going to get funded. But we have found that over time, if we're persistent, things do eventually get funded. As part of this process as well, and as part of our discussion, we also create, and Isabel's going to be really helpful this year, the district needs statement. And that's where we sort of write out in narrative form what our most pressing issues are and what we've seen this year to date. So that's basically what this process is. The way that we do it, the way that everybody's doing it here is you're on a team, you do the outreach, whether you are talking to schools, or I think Chuck, you were talking to bids, or whoever you were talking to. And then you dump those requests into the Google Sheet that we have. I think everybody has received, and tell me if you have not, the list of resources and the Google Sheet. And from that Google Sheet, you have not. So I'm going to make sure that you get a copy of that Google Sheet. The next time we meet at our next meeting, we're going to go through those requests that we've compiled. Another piece of this, and I sent the schedule out to you, is the borough consultations. Borough consultations are when all the community boards in Manhattan meet with the agencies. They meet with the DOE, they meet with DOT, they meet with, you know, all the agencies or the primary agencies, and they ask them what their priorities are so that we can align and see where their needs are, so that we can sort of maybe dovetail our requests. Everybody can sit in on those borough consultations. I sent out that schedule, but I also get written responses, and I'm dropping those into a Google Doc that everybody can read. So if you're not able to attend the borough consultation, no worries, we get transcript. So that can always be accessed. Any questions about the process? Right.
Did we hear back about the status of our requests from last year?
We did, and sort of that's going to be part of it. Julie and I are finagling. I have gone through with all OMB requests that we're taking them out.
Okay.
So that our request, the core of our request this year is always the previous requests that weren't funded last year, if they haven't changed significantly. So that's what you're going to see. Julie?
Yeah, if you check the second and third tabs, you'll see one of them tabbed is budget request to clarify from last year, and then the denied request on the third tab.
I apologize.
I couldn't hear you, I'm sorry.
There's like 4 tabs in the file I forwarded. So one tab shows the request that we need to clarify and that we can reuse for this year's budget request, and then a list of denied requests.
Okay, thank you.
Got it. Thank you. Yeah, I hadn't investigated your link very thoroughly.
I
So
just sent it
that's
today, so.
Any other questions about the process or any supports that people need? Anything? I just want to check, anybody, I'm not missing you, Zona or Pete up there. Any questions, or is everything okay? So I think we're pretty much on track for this, but at any point, reach out. I know it seems confusing, but basically just think it's a list of what we need for the district. That's at bottom what it is. But any supports you need, just let Julie and I know. Mike, I'm going to send you to make sure you have all the links and the things for that. But other than that, I'm just going to open it up. Is there any new business for the committee? Any new business? Okay, and I'm checking with Zona and Pete, seeing none, and Charles, I'm going to end the meeting and say goodnight, everyone. It's great having everybody back. Happy back to school, if that's what you're doing.
Thank you.
And thank you for being in person. So I'm just gonna pop over here and turn off the video. And